Have you ever gone wild with your friends? So wild that life becomes boring for weeks after? Those are the best. I lived for those times. It's the rest of the space in between that I can't stand. Every time I watch my friends leave, I'd be hit with a burst of anxiety because I knew it was back to my mundane, monotonous life of working a job I didn't like, dealing with people I didn't care about, and living a life I didn't want. I could go on and on about how terrible my life has been. I could sit for hours and tell you about the mother that walked out on me or the father that would beat me on a whim. I could go on for days about the kids at school who rejected me for being weird, but that's not what this is about. However, I will tell you a few things. First and foremost, I was intellectually gifted, as one of my elementary school teachers told me. According to state testing, I was ranked in the top 1% of the country, but despite this, I found school to be extremely painful. I barely passed my classes from year to year because I wouldn't bother to show up. I mean, why would I? My choice was between going to a class where everyone treated me like shit, studying material a retard could understand, or hanging out with the only group of people on this earth who accepted me for who I am. I can still hear my teacher saying, "Ryan, you need to buckle down, young man." The fact that I got through school, showing up once every 2 weeks, really says a lot about the modern educational system, doesn't it? The times I did show up to class, I had to deal with Chad. Chad was the most popular kid in the school. He had a bunch of friends, good grades, and made it a personal goal to make my life a living hell. I hated Chad. I hated him more than Hitler hated Jews. I can't even tell you how many nights I'd spend praying that Chad would be diagnosed with cancer or get hit by a car and die in agonizing pain. Unfortunately, I never realized that God would never answer my prayers, any of them. I'd have had better luck killing and torturing Chad myself and praying for forgiveness, because that's just how God works. Well, anyway, as the years passed, I found myself working a shitty job, making enough to stay alive. I had nobody who cared about me. I'd have been completely alone in this world had it not been for my friends. We all lived pretty far from each other, but despite this, on the last weekend of every month, we'd all go wild. We raised a lot of hell over the years. Thankfully, we never got caught for the shit we did. I think the most fun I ever had in my life was the Sunday morning we were playing mailbox baseball. The game is pretty self-explanatory. We came up to one house where an old, grumpy man lived. He just so happened to be getting his morning paper as we drove by and smashed his mailbox to pieces. I was the one who hit it, and I used a strong metal bat. The mailbox itself was shattered, and we all roared with laughter as the old man dropped his coffee in surprise. That is my fondest memory I ever made with my friends. But once I was alone, it was me. Alone. Again. Nothing but my thoughts, which tortured me so. There was one thing I thought about quite often. My ex-girlfriend. Her name was Sarah. Sarah was the only girlfriend I ever had, and I honestly loved her. I loved her with all my heart. I still remember laying with her on the hood of my Toyota 96 and just looking up into the sky. I can still hear her voice too.
I love you, Ryan.
I wish I could just freeze that moment in time and never stop living it. I liked being with her more than I liked being with my friends, and trust me when I say, that's really saying something. Unfortunately, she just disappeared one day. No note, no goodbye, no nothing. 1 second she was the light of my soul, illuminating the fiber of my very existence. And the next, she was nowhere to be found. Out of my life, forever. That was 2 years ago now, and it still stings to think about it. I spent a lot of time looking for her, and I still don't know what to think. Was she gone because of something I did? I thought we had a perfect relationship, which is why it was such a surprise. Sarah was the only woman I ever had a relationship with, and I started to believe she was the only woman I would ever love. This sent me into a spiraling depression, and I drank even more than I usually did. The days leading up to seeing my friends seemed to go on forever. I didn't know what to do with myself. That woman was the only thing that truly gave me any hope for my future. I was a better version of myself when I was with her, and now she was gone. For all I knew, she was dead. She may as well have been, because I mourned her departure all the same. That Friday night, I got a call from my friend before he and the guys came over. I almost told him not to, but he persuaded me it would be dumb to sit in the house alone and cry over my ex. I agreed with him, and he said he'd be there in 5 minutes. When they arrived, we all started drinking and shooting the shit. Everyone shared their own story of getting dumped, which we've all heard dozens of times. It still made me feel a little bit better though. I actually changed my mindset. I started thinking, this could be the last day of my life. I'm gonna live it to the fullest. After having a few more beers, I talked the guys into going for a few street races. They sheepishly agreed, and we were off. By the time we were on the road for a few minutes, I knew that I was a little too tipsy to be driving. But I knew I would be ridiculed for the rest of the night if I turned around. I started talking up how I was gonna win one race and leave the undefeated king. After challenging a few random strangers at red lights, we didn't get any bites. Until we came to the perfect road for a race. Some jackass in a white truck pulled up to the light. I revved my engine and looked over at him. He looked at me and revved his engine. As I looked inward, I noticed he was a total redneck. He was wearing a flannel shirt with suspenders and had to have been at least 100 pounds overweight. Being a northern transplant in the deep south, I yelled out the insult one might expect. "I'm gonna fuck you like we did back in the war, hick boy!" My friends all found it amusing, and we were a perfect cacophony of drunken slurs and laughter. The light turned green, and I put the car into drive. That was the last thing I remember before waking up in the hospital. I couldn't feel my legs, and I felt like someone who just met the wrong group of peaceful refugees. I looked up at the nurse and asked her what the hell happened. She looked on with a frown and told me that I was involved in a major car accident. "Where are all my friends? Are they alright?" She then told me I was the only survivor. I couldn't believe it. I didn't speak the rest of the time I was there. With my friends gone, I lost every single person in my life that I cared about. Now I had no girlfriend, no friends, and no future. What was I going to do now? Despite being a broken fragment of a human being, time marched on. Father Time didn't care about the tragedy of my life. After I physically recuperated from the accident, I was informed that I would never be able to walk again. On the surface, that sounded pretty bad, but I quickly realized that I was eligible for disability compensation. I made more money than I did when I had a job, and I didn't even have to do anything. I spent the first few months drinking and smoking weed. That was literally what I did from the moment I opened my eyes until the moment I was asleep again. I thought about suicide every day, and the guilt seemed to be crushing me from the inside. I don't even have something to compare it to. Maybe Jesse on Breaking Bad after he kills Gale and loses his mind, but this was real. I was responsible for the deaths of all my friends. Not to mention, my girlfriend just left me out of nowhere one day. After life continued on like this for a long time, I started to become completely apathetic. It was almost like there just wasn't a reason to do anything. A few more months went by, and I started to recover a little from everything that happened. I still had nightmares and everything, but it wasn't the only thing I thought about anymore. During this time, I found myself becoming increasingly bored. I never realized how much I depended on my friends to keep me sane. I just didn't have any fun whatsoever when they weren't around. One day, I decided to go out and buy a laptop. It had been a long time since I used one, and getting my internet service hooked up again was a real hassle. But the internet was pretty fun when I started using it again. I almost felt normal again. I ended up spending most of my time on the deep web. One night, I came across a horror video. The title was, "I Lost My Family to the Deep Web." The story was really interesting, and I wondered if it was true or not, but it got me genuinely interested in the deep web. I spent the rest of the night listening to deep web horror stories. After about 7 hours of stories, I called it a night. When I woke up the next morning, I started to wonder if I should download Tor and explore the deep web a bit myself. It had been a long time since I did my usual thrill seeking, and I really needed a pick-me-up. Within 10 minutes, I had Tor downloaded and installed on my computer. My heart was pounding when I opened it. Was I going to be stalked and killed? Was I going to see some of the crazy things I heard about in those horror stories? I had no idea at the time, but I wanted nothing more than to find out. I started out exploring the hidden wiki. I must have clicked on 100 dead links before I even found a page that wasn't broken. That didn't bug me though. It wasn't like I had anything better to do. The first page I came across included instructions of some kind. After studying them thoroughly, I came to the realization that it was an instruction manual on how to make a bomb. They even had a section on how to set the timer and the kinds of places to put it in public for the most destruction. I was a little creeped out, but this bomb manual thing wasn't nearly shocking enough for my tastes. I needed something more. I did a little more browsing when I came across something that was truly crazy. It was a video, and in the video was a man with a black bag over his head. I started to get a bit nervous when the video started playing by itself. I thought to myself that I should stop it because I might see something that can't be unseen. But part of me wanted to see it anyway. I was looking for cheap thrills after all, right? There was some really ominous music in the background, and I began to feel extremely uncomfortable. The suspense was killing me, although I knew what was going to happen to the man from the very beginning. I almost clicked away after an entire minute passed, and the man continued to just sit there. I started to move my cursor toward the back button when I saw another man walk over to the man with the black bag over his face. The other man removed the bag and walked away. He then said something in another language. That was when I heard a loud noise. It sounded like a large metal trapdoor or something like that. All of a sudden, hundreds of scorpions fell from the ceiling onto this poor man. It was the most horrifying thing I'd ever seen in my entire life. I'll never forget the way he screamed for those last few seconds. He was dead before he could take another breath. I sat in my chair, hardly believing what I'd just witnessed. As sick as it might be to admit this, I actually felt pretty exhilarated by this. My forehead was covered in cold sweat, and for the first time in a long time, I felt alive. And that was when my new hobby started to envelop my life. Aside from occasionally smoking a bowl, I'd spend all my time on the deep web, searching for the most disturbing things I could find. I don't know why I did, but it was so exciting. Even more exciting than all those crazy stunts I did with my friends. There was just something fascinating about the dark extremes of the human experience that gave me some weird high. I can't explain it, and I don't understand it. And I'm pretty sure that I don't want to. I could go on and on about the various things I'd seen on the deep web. I could talk about the disturbing child pornography, mutilation of animal carcasses, and torture that would make medieval Europeans cringe. But I'll skip over that for time's sake. I'm not entirely sure how long it had been. Perhaps a few months, maybe a year or two. I don't really know. I didn't keep track of the time. I didn't have a reason to. No job, no friends, nothing outside of my twisted little internet hobby. But it was around this time that I began to grow increasingly bored of the deep web. It seems once you spend enough time on there, it begins to feel like you've seen it all. After all, if I hadn't seen it all, I'd at least have seen most of it. But every time I thought about doing something other than browsing the deep web, I was reminded of the time I spent being alone and doing absolutely nothing. I didn't want to go back to that. I had no desire. Looking at torture porn on the deep web was better than that by a long shot. Well, one night I was browsing the dark web as usual, and something strange happened. A black chat box appeared on my screen. I didn't really know what to make of it. It just seemed out of this world. I was instantly brought back to all those horror stories about the deep web. Was this going to be the end of my deep web experience, or even my life? Ominous red text came to appear in the box. "Can you talk?" I got a chill down my spine and instantly felt spooked. I don't know if it was because this was so unexpected, or because I'd heard so many deep web horror stories that began just like this. Sure, I typed back. "I bet you're really missing Sarah right now, aren't you?" the stranger replied. I was taken aback. How the hell did he know about Sarah? I never even mentioned her anywhere on the internet. I felt my heart start to pound, but again like it used to when I first started using the deep web. But this time, it wasn't for excitement. It was from fear. I thought about shutting my laptop down, but I realized that this guy must have been stalking me for some time, if he knew about Sarah. I figured I may as well hear what he has to say at the very least. I started typing, "Yes, I do. How do you know about her? Who are you?" He replied with only 2 words, but they left me seriously questioning my own sanity. "The devil." I had no idea what to think. This guy not only knew about Sarah, but he claimed he was the devil. I sat there completely in shock for some time. That was a more likely explanation than some deep web hacker that just so happened to be stalking me for half my life. I know, it sounds dumb, but I actually believed him. Then he got me on a voice call, and I knew that my suspicions were confirmed. Hello?
How are you this evening?
I'm fine.
I understand how strange it must be for me to be contacting you like this, but there is something that I simply must inform you of.
And what's that?
You remember when Sarah left you, right?
Yes.
What if I told you that she left you for your worst enemy, Chad?
Bullshit. There's no way she would do that.
You do remember how materialistic she was, right? Is it really a stretch to think that she'd leave you, someone who could barely provide for himself, for someone who could buy her all the things her heart desired?
I don't believe
you. Don't have to take my word for it. Just look at Chad's Facebook profile. As you can see, they clearly have quite the loving relationship and don't mind sharing it with the world.
I couldn't fucking believe it. There she was, with Chad. There must have been hundreds of pictures of them. Pictures of them at the beach, shopping, and even kissing.
I think you'll really appreciate this status Sarah made just after she left you for Chad.
A month ago, I was stuck in a dead-end relationship with a loser who was never going to get his act together. Now, I'm with a real man who knows how to treat a lady. This is the best decision I have ever made. I love you, Chad.
Why are you telling me this?
Because you can get away with the murder. Don't lie to me. I know it's already crossed your mind.
No. I can't. I'll spend the rest of my life in prison.
No, you won't. Look at who you're talking to. I can guarantee you get away with the murder. All you have to do is show up and shoot them.
I can't. Okay. I have a question.
Yes.
Is she happy?
She's much happier than she ever was with you.
If she's happier with him, then I can live with that. I can let her go. Then we're done here. We're done.
I will warn you now. This is a one-time offer. I can assure that you get away with the murder scot-free, but if you turn down my offer, there is no turning back. You will have to live in a world where the bastard who tormented you for 8 years stole the love of your life, and you did nothing about it. If you can live with that, then so can I.
What is your plan?
Very simple, actually. Like I said before, all you have to do is show up and put a bullet through both of their skulls.
Wait, I'm fine with killing Chad, but how can I kill Sarah too? I still love her.
She betrayed you. How can you be that much of a coward and let her get away with it?
I'll do it.
What was that?
Okay, I'll do it.
Alright, good. You made the right choice. You'll go over their house tonight, roll up to the front door in your wheelchair, knock, and when they answer, let 'em have it. You'll find a pistol in the cabinet where you keep your weed.
And you're sure I'll get away with it?
Only if you do what I tell you to do. If you deviate from the plan even a little, then you're on your own.
Okay. I'm in. And with that, the devil was gone just as fast as he had appeared. I didn't feel good about this whole thing, but what other choice did I have? The reason I got my friends killed was because of her. It was her fault that all my friends were dead. That bitch was gonna pay. I knew she never believed in me, and that Chad. Oh, how I was gonna love killing that curly-haired motherfucker. My heart was pumping as I made my way over there. I couldn't imagine something on this earth I wanted more than to see them dead. I licked my lips in anticipation to watch them die. When I got there, I instantly began to regret my decision. But I kept going anyway. I slowly wheeled myself up to their front door and rang the doorbell. My heart was pounding like a drum in my chest. Could I really go through with this? I almost turned around to leave, but then they opened the door together. They both looked really surprised to see me after all these years. I slowly raised the gun and pointed it toward Chad. My arm kept shaking, and I did my best to pull the trigger, but it just wouldn't shoot. That was when I realized I couldn't do it, so I dropped the gun and looked at the floor. "I'm sorry," I said.
Ryan, what the fuck are you doing here?
All of a sudden, the devil appeared out of nowhere. He gave me a disappointed look and picked up the gun. He then shot both Chad and Sarah in the head. I screamed at him, but it was no use. He vanished into thin air just as soon as he had appeared. I couldn't believe my eyes. Was I hallucinating? It all happened so fast. It didn't even seem like real life. I just sat there in my wheelchair for a minute, having just witnessed a double homicide. That was when I heard police sirens from behind me. 2 officers got out of the car and started screaming at me to freeze. I knew that I was going to spend the rest of my life in prison now, for sure. So, allow this to be a warning to those of you who use the deep web, as I did. If you ever encounter the devil for yourself, whatever you do, don't take him up on his offer.